The first time Lena heard the child call her Mama, it was by accident. Soft, sleepy, a word that slipped out between a yawn and a sip of warm milk. It was a Sunday evening in Maple Ridge, a quiet suburb 40 minutes outside Boston, where the houses were tall and the maples taller, and the streetlights clicked on like polite applause. Charles Whittaker's cedar and glass mansion sat at the end of a curve, the kind of home that photographed well for magazines. Black-framed windows, river-stone path, and a door that opened like a secret. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon oil and the ocean. Even though the water was miles away, Lena arrived in March with a thrift store suitcase and a promise she'd made to herself: don't get attached. She had crossed too many state lines with too many temporary jobs, diners, motel laundry rooms, houses where no one learned her last name, to know what attachment did to a person with no safety net. Agency paperwork said, Whittaker residence, live-in housekeeper, nanny, salary competitive. Competitive meant enough to stop choosing between rent and groceries. She met Ava on her second day. The child was 3, all questions and curls, with a whisper of a lisp, and eyes that were the exact color of rain when it thinks about turning to snow. She loved picture books and blue crayons, and lined up her stuffed animals by rank and bravery. She did not like ketchup. She did not like loud noises. She did not especially like empty doorways. "Where's your mommy?" Lena asked gently that first afternoon, kneeling beside a row of stuffed bears. The room was built for light. Pale rug, white bookshelves, a window seat scattered with star pillows. Ava pressed a bear into Lena's hands and said, matter of fact, Mommy is gone with the boats. The agency hadn't said much and Charles hadn't volunteered more. He was 38, all lean edges and immaculate suits. A millionaire who had made his money selling software no one could explain at Thanksgiving. He moved with the focus of someone who had once learned to run without falling and never forgot. He woke early, ate little, and answered emails like a man bailing water from a boat that wouldn't sink. He was kind to everyone in the house. He was gentle with Ava. He was never home before 7. The house staff was small. Mrs. Klein, the part-time cook whose chowder had been mentioned in an actual food blog. Rico, the groundskeeper who talked to the roses like they were union members. And now Lena, who did everything else. She learned the rhythms quickly. Fresh sheets on Tuesdays and Fridays, piano teacher on Wednesdays, a therapist on Saturdays who spoke in warm, round sentences about feelings and safe spaces. Lena learned the child's rhythms too. Ava loved stories that started with weather. Once there was a fog so thick even the streetlights got lost. She loved baths with too many bubbles and hated the part where the water went down like it might take her with it. At nape time she needed one song, always the same, You Are My Sunshine, slow and soft. The first time Lena sang it, Ava blinked, sat up, and placed a tiny hand on the older woman's cheek, as if to confirm the voice belonged to a real person. Again, she said, at night the house grew big. The kind of big that made a person feel like a comma in a paragraph that never ended. Lena walked its hush with a basket on her hip, collecting small evidences of a life, a sock, a purple hairband, a wooden carrot from a toy kitchen. Sometimes in the library, she paused by the photographs on the mantel. Charles holding baby Ava, sunburned and stunned, a new father pretending not to be terrified. Another of a woman in a red coat standing on a dock, wind in her hair, a gull frozen mid-flight behind her. No caption, no date. No frame for the space left on the mantel where another photo might have gone. On the 3rd week before dawn, a storm crashed in from the Atlantic. Maple branches scraped the windows. The old house remembered how to creak. Ava woke crying. Lena was out of bed before the second sob, bare feet, sweater thrown on. The practiced dart of someone who had learned long ago that tenderness is a choreography. Shh, Lena whispered, scooping the child up, one arm under her legs, one hand cradling the curls. It's only wind, little bird. It sounds like giants, Ava hiccuped, breath hot against Lena's neck. Friendly giants, Lena said. They live in the trees and knock to say hello. They sat in the rocking chair, the two of them, storm lighting the room in flashes of white. The house seemed to breathe around them. Ava's breath slowed, a small boat learning the rhythm of larger waves. When Lena started the song, the child tucked closer, thumb drifting towards sleep. That's when it happened. A soft exhale of syllables spoken into the hollow between Lena's collarbone and the world. "Mama," Ava sighed, heavier with sleep than meaning. Then silence, deep and clean as snow. Lena kept rocking. She stared at the far wall and felt the word land like a seed somewhere she had forgotten was soil. She didn't correct the child. She didn't say anything at all. Later, when Ava snored the smallest snore, Lena pressed a kiss into her hair in a way that could be explained away, if anyone asked. At breakfast, Charles noticed something in the room had shifted and couldn't find the word for it. Ava came to the table with bedhead that made her look like she had stuck a fork in God. She climbed into her booster seat and reached for a strawberry, hand still dimpled at the knuckles. "Daddy," she announced, "Lena sings the Sunshine Song better than Mrs. Klein." "Mrs. Klein sings?" Charles asked, amused. "She hums when she burns the toast," Ava said. "I don't burn the toast," Mrs. Klein called from the stove, not unkindly. "The toast is ambitious," Charles turned to Lena. "You were up with her?" "The storm," Lena said. "Giants in the trees." He nodded, a small, grateful tilt, then cleared his throat in the way men do when feelings get too close to their pressed shirts. "My flight to Austin is at noon. I'll be back Wednesday. You have the emergency numbers?" Lena had them, printed and taped to the inside of a cabinet door because the refrigerator was too public. He gave her a card anyway, as if numbers change when written on something expensive. When he left for the car, Ava slid out of her seat and chased him to the hallway. "Kiss," she demanded. He bent, she delivered. Lena stood by the kitchen island and pretended to read a grocery list that was really just 2 words: whole milk. The day smoothed itself into routine. Blocks built, blocks toppled. A dangerous amount of glitter. A phone call from the therapist rescheduling to Monday. At nap time, the Sunshine Song again, Ava's lashes resting like little decisions on her cheeks. Lena lingered in the doorway longer than she needed to, then went to the laundry room and cried without making a sound. That evening, Rico brought in a vase of roses he'd cut before the rain. "Too perfect," he said, setting them on the counter. "They make the house look like it's lying." Lena laughed, surprised at the sound. "Maybe the house is allowed to lie," she said. "Just a little." The storm moved on and left the sky scrubbed. After dinner, Ava lined her stuffed animals along the window seat and conducted a roll call. "Bear 1. Present Bear 2. Present Captain Rabbit. Present Jelly the octopus." She paused, thoughtful. Jelly is at her grandma's, she decided. She will FaceTime later. "Lucky grandma," Lena said. At bedtime, as the room turned navy and the nightlight painted a crescent on the wall, Ava reached up with both hands, asking to be carried again. Lena lifted her and felt the child's weight as something more than ounces and pounds. On the way to sleep, Ava's voice hovered. "Mama?" Lena's heart did something foolish. "Yes, baby?" A beat, a breath. "Can Jelly have a bedtime snack tomorrow?" "Of course," Lena said, voice steady. "Of course she can." Later, when the house settled and the dishwasher hummed like a distant train, Lena stood at the mantel and looked at the photo of the woman in the red coat. Dock, wind. A gull caught mid-argument. "Boats," Ava had said. "Mommy gone with the boats." Lena touched the edge of the frame, then pulled her hand back as if it might burn. She told herself again, silently, the 2 words that were supposed to keep her safe don't attach. But in a house that held so many pictures, there was suddenly a new one, invisible and insistent. A child asleep on a shoulder, a storm like drums outside. A word spoken into the soft place where names go to hide. In the driveway, beyond glass and shadow, a car slowed for a second, as if the driver had almost missed the turn. A figure inside checked the address on a scrap of paper, then drove on. The house did not feel it yet, but the tide had changed. The rain had stopped 2 days ago, but the smell of wet leaves still lingered in the Whitaker garden. It was the kind of smell that reminded Lena of home, though she wasn't sure where home was anymore. Maybe somewhere along the bus routes that stitched one job to another. Maybe nowhere. Inside, Ava sat on the kitchen counter, swinging her feet and waiting for pancakes. Mrs. Klein was off on Sunday mornings, and Charles was still in Austin. The house felt lighter, quieter, like a paused song. Lena poured the batter, and the sizzling sound filled the room. "Lena," Ava said between kicks, "do pancakes sleep when we close the lid?" "They rest," Lena replied, smiling. "They like to nap under the heat." That made Ava giggle. "Then I'll whisper, so I don't wake them." The little girl's words were always half dream, half poem. Sometimes Lena wondered how a child so small could speak like that, as if she remembered something from before she was born. After breakfast, they went out into the yard. The sun had turned the puddles into tiny mirrors. Ava stomped in them, shrieking at the splashes. Her laughter was so alive that even the old oak seemed to lean closer. Lena sat on the porch steps, watching. She thought of the word mama again, how it had sounded in the storm, fragile and final at the same time. A word that had crossed a boundary she never meant to draw. By afternoon, Ava wanted to paint. She dragged her little easel to the living room and asked Lena to sit beside her. "I'll paint you," she declared. "Oh, and what color am I?" "Yellow," Ava said immediately. "Because you're sunshine." The sentence struck Lena harder than it should have. She turned her face away, pretending to find more paper towels. Sunshine, that was the song. The one Ava wanted every night. The one her real mother must have once sung. When evening came, Charles called. The call went to speakerphone, and Ava ran to it. "Daddy!" "Hey, sweetheart," came the tired but gentle voice from hundreds of miles away. "Did you behave?" "I painted pancakes," Ava shouted proudly. "And I called Lena Sunshine." Charles chuckled softly. "That sounds right." Then to Lena, "Everything all right at home?" "Yes, sir." "She's doing well." "Eats fine, sleeps fine." "Good." A pause, then lower, quieter. "Thank you, Lena. Really." She didn't know how to answer gratitude that felt too large for a paycheck. So she only said, "You're welcome, Mr. Whitaker." The next morning she woke before dawn. The house was still, the kind of silence that presses on the ears. She checked the baby monitor. Ava was asleep, one arm flung out, hair tangled, a stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. Lena made coffee and stood by the kitchen window. The mist outside was pale, the kind that erases everything beyond the garden fence. Somewhere in that white blur, she thought she saw movement. A car maybe, headlights off, just waiting. But when she blinked, it was gone. Later that day, Rico mentioned it casually while trimming the hedges. "You see that SUV out front last night? Black-tinted windows. Drove past slow." "No," Lena said, heart tightening. "Do you think—" "Probably just a realtor," Rico shrugged. These houses always attract dreamers, but something about it stuck in her mind. That evening, after Ava's bath, Lena wrapped her in a towel and brushed her hair. "Tell me about the boats," Lena said softly. Ava's reflection in the mirror stilled. "Mommy's on the boats," she said again, but this time her voice wavered. "Daddy says the sea took her away." "The sea?" "She liked the sea more than the land," Ava whispered. Then after a moment, "Sometimes I think she'll come back when the moon is yellow." "Mommy said yellow moons mean return." Lena's hand froze mid-brush. Children made stories to fill holes, but sometimes those holes led straight to truth. That night Ava couldn't sleep. She kept sitting up, asking questions. What if the sea forgets her? What if the moon gets lost? Lena lay beside her, humming. "Then I'll remember her for you," she said. When Ava finally drifted off, Lena stepped into the hallway. The air felt charged like before thunder. She looked down the long corridor lined with framed photographs, family gatherings, vacations, birthdays. All had one thing in common. After Ava turned one, the woman in the red coat vanished from the frames. She went to the library again. The photo on the mantel glimmered faintly in the lamplight. The woman's smile was serene, her hair whipping in the sea wind. Lena leaned closer and noticed a detail she had never seen before. A silver necklace with a small crescent pendant. At the back of the photo frame, a folded paper was wedged in. She pulled it out. It was a postcard. Portsmouth Harbour, August 2019, written in neat, looping letters. "For Ava, I'll bring the waves home." No signature. Lena's pulse quickened. She set it back carefully, pretending it wasn't real. But when she turned, she caught her reflection in the window, and behind her for an instant she thought she saw the silhouette of a woman outside. The next morning Charles returned. He looked exhausted, but relieved to be home. Ava ran to him, squealing, "Daddy!" He scooped her up, kissed her hair, then looked at Lena. Everything was okay. Yes, just quiet, he nodded. Good. His eyes lingered a second too long, as if reading something in her face. That night, after Ava was asleep, Charles stood in the kitchen doorway. "Lena," he began, voice careful, "I should tell you something about my wife." Lena froze. The word wife still hung in the house like perfume. She didn't die, he said finally. She left 3 years ago, without a note. I told Ava she went away with the boats because, well, it was easier than saying she didn't want to come back. He rubbed a hand over his face, the mask of a man who'd told that story too many times and still couldn't make peace with it. Her name is Elise. Lena felt the ground shift beneath that name. And if she came back, he looked up sharply.
Why would you ask that?
Just wondering, Lena said quickly. Ava dreams about her. Talks about yellow moons, Charles exhaled. Elise used to say that, about yellow moons. She was an artist, saw meaning in everything. He gave a bitter smile. The sea didn't take her, Lena. She just sailed away before the rest of us could admit the storm. They both fell silent. The hum of the refrigerator filling the space. Then, faintly from upstairs, Ava's voice half asleep calling, "Mama!" Charles looked toward the ceiling. She still does that sometimes, he said softly. In her sleep, Lena couldn't meet his eyes. Later that week, letters began arriving. Thin envelopes with no return address, all addressed to Mr. Charles Whitaker. He didn't mention them, just tucked them into his study drawer. But one night, when he forgot to lock the door, Lena saw one lying open on the desk. It said only, "She deserves to know the truth." There was no signature, only a faint scent of sea salt clinging to the paper. That same night, while closing the windows, Lena heard something. Soft footsteps on gravel outside. Then the click of the front gate. She ran to the window but saw only darkness, and beyond it, the faintest shimmer of moonlight on the driveway. The moon was yellow, and somewhere deep in the house, a clock began to chime. The tide at last was coming in. It began with the scent of salt, not the faint trace that sometimes drifted in through the window from the nearby river, but the dense, living smell of the open sea, sharp, clean, and cold enough to make the heart stumble. Lena noticed it first in the hallway. She was dusting the shelf outside the study when the air shifted, as if someone had opened a door to a coastline. It wasn't possible. Maple Ridge was 30 miles inland, but the smell lingered, threading itself through the walls, through the rugs, through her pulse. Ava was upstairs, painting again. It had become her new obsession. Waves, moons, boats that never quite reached shore. She painted with the serious concentration of a scientist, her small hand moving in slow, thoughtful arcs. "Look, Lena," she said when Lena came to check on her. "It's Mommy's ocean." Lena crouched beside her. "How do you know it's hers, sweetheart?" Ava smiled dreamily. "Because she told me last night." Lena froze. "She told you?" "In my dream." Ava dipped the brush into a swirl of blue and whispered, "She said she's coming home." For a moment the room seemed smaller, the air tighter. Lena forced a smile. "Dreams are funny things, little bird. Sometimes they just borrow from our hearts." But Ava shook her head with the kind of certainty only a child can have. "No," she said, "the moon was turning yellow again. And when it does, I'll see her at the gate." That night Lena couldn't sleep. She sat by her window long after the lights in the mansion had gone dark. The garden outside glowed faintly under the moonlight. Everything looked drenched in silver, like it had been dipped in memory. And then she saw it, movement by the gate. A shape, still and watching, her breath caught. It was too far to see clearly, but there was something about the figure. A woman's outline, tall, wrapped in a long coat, hair stirring in the wind. Lena blinked. The figure was gone. The next morning Charles was quieter than usual at breakfast. His phone kept buzzing. He ignored it. When he finally answered, his tone was clipped, defensive. "No, there's nothing to discuss. I told you that chapter's closed." Then he noticed Lena standing with a tray of toast and fell silent. Ava was drawing at the table, humming to herself. "Daddy, is Mommy back yet?"
she asked without looking up. Charles's fork stopped halfway to his mouth.
"What makes you say that?" "The moon told me," Ava said simply. "And the sea smells like her again." Charles laughed softly, the way people do when they're frightened and pretending not to be. "You and your dreams," he said, ruffling her hair. "Eat your breakfast, pumpkin." Lena didn't miss the way his hands trembled as he reached for his coffee. Later that day, Charles left for a meeting downtown. The house fell into its afternoon hush. Lena put Ava down for a nap, humming the Sunshine Song, and tiptoed toward the study. She hadn't meant to pry. She told herself she was just checking the mail. But her eyes went straight to the drawer where he had been keeping the letters. It wasn't locked anymore. There were 7 envelopes now, all postmarked from small coastal towns along the eastern seaboard: Portsmouth, Gloucester, Kennebunkport. Each one contained a single sentence written in the same looping script. "She still calls for me. Don't let her forget the song. The sea remembers. I never left, only drifted." The last one said, "When the yellow moon rises." "I'll come home." Lena pressed a hand to her chest. Her pulse felt like thunder under her skin. That evening, as the sun bled orange through the glass, she took Ava out to the porch for some air. The child was unusually quiet, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Lena?" she said after a while. "If my mommy comes back, will you go away?" The question struck like a blade wrapped in cotton. Lena hesitated, searching for the right words. "If she comes back, that means you'll have 2 people who love you very much." "But I only have one heart," Ava said softly. "How will I fit you both inside it?" Lena felt something crack behind her ribs. "Your heart will grow bigger," she whispered. Hearts are good at that. That night, rain came again, soft, unsteady rain that sounded more like whispers than weather. Lena was cleaning the kitchen when she heard a noise from the front of the house, a knock, not loud. Just 3 slow, deliberate taps. She froze. The clock on the wall read 11:37 p.m. No one ever came that late. She glanced up the stairs. Ava was asleep. She took a breath and went to the door. Through the frosted glass, she could make out a blurred figure. "A woman, who's there?" Lena called. No answer. Another knock, softer this time, against every instinct screaming, "Don't!" Lena unlatched the door and opened it a crack. A woman stood there, soaked from the rain. She looked like she'd walked straight out of the sea. Hair dark and dripping, eyes an impossible grey blue. She was beautiful, in the fragile, fractured way of someone who had been gone too long from the world. "Who are you?" Lena whispered. The woman smiled faintly, lips trembling. "I'm Elise." The name hit the air like thunder. Lena couldn't move. "Elise Whitaker." The woman nodded. "I used to be." She stepped closer, and Lena caught the faint scent of salt and lavender, an echo from the photographs. "Where's my daughter?" Elise asked, her voice barely more than breath. "She's sleeping," Lena said. She's okay," Elise exhaled shakily, tears filling her eyes. "I've been trying to get back for so long." The letters, he never answered. Lena's mind raced. "You sent those?" Elise nodded. "Everyone." She looked past Lena into the house. "Can I see her?" Lena hesitated. She thought of Ava's small sleeping body upstairs, the way she whispered "Mama" into the night, and the word twisted in her chest. "She doesn't remember your face," Lena said softly. "I know," Elise murmured, "but I remember hers." At that moment, headlights flared in the driveway. Charles's car. Elise stepped back, panic flashing in her eyes. "He can't see me." "Not yet. What do you mean?" "He'll send me away again," she whispered. "Please, just tell her. Tell her I'll come back when the moon turns full." Then, before Lena could stop her, Elise slipped into the darkness, melting into the rain like she had never been there at all. When Charles walked in moments later, drenched and weary, Lena was still standing by the open door. "Who were you talking to?" he asked sharply. She swallowed. "No one. Just the wind." He looked past her into the empty night, his jaw tightening. "The gate was open," he said. Keep it locked, Lena. I don't want strangers wandering in. She nodded, but her hands were shaking. After he went upstairs, Lena closed the door, locked it, and leaned against the wood. Her heart was racing, her mind a storm of images. The woman's eyes, the smell of salt, the name spoken aloud. Upstairs, Ava stirred in her sleep and murmured something that made Lena freeze. "Mommy's back," she sighed. She sang the sunshine song. Lena sat on the edge of her own bed until morning, listening to the rain fade into silence. The next day, Charles left early. He didn't say where he was going. Around noon, Ava wandered into the living room carrying her sketchbook. "Look, Lena," she said proudly. "I drew us." Lena smiled and bent to look. But the drawing made her blood run cold. There were 3 figures, Ava in the middle, holding 2 hands. On one side was Lena, smiling in yellow. On the other, a woman in blue with long hair and a crescent necklace. Ava had written their names in shaky crayon letters. Mama, me, Lena. Below it, in smaller writing, "When the moon turns yellow, we'll all be together." That night the moon rose early, pale gold, full and heavy over the maple trees, and far beyond the garden fence. By the edge of the road, the figure in the raincoat waited again. The yellow moon had risen over Maple Ridge, hanging low and watchful, like a lantern that had seen too much. Its light fell across the Whitaker mansion, slipping through glass and curtain, painting everything in shades of memory. Lena couldn't sleep that night. Her body was tired, but her mind kept circling back to the same question. Had Elise truly been there, or had loneliness finally begun to play tricks on her? The scent of salt still clung to her hair. Her heart still carried the tremor of that voice. "I used to be." She rose quietly, moving through the dark house barefoot. The air felt charged like static before a storm. At the top of the stairs she paused. Ava's door was ajar, the faint glow of her nightlight spilling into the hallway. Lena pushed the door open. Ava was awake, sitting upright on her bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit to her chest. Her eyes were wide but calm. "Sweetheart," Lena whispered, stepping closer. "What are you doing up?" "She was here," Ava said softly. Lena froze. "Who was here?" Ava pointed to the window. "Mommy, she sang my song." Lena turned. The window was open just a crack, curtain moving slightly with the wind. No footprints, no sound. But the room smelled faintly of the sea again, salt, driftwood, and something floral beneath it, like crushed lavender. "Maybe it was just a dream," Lena said carefully. Ava shook her head. "She said not to tell Daddy." That made Lena's stomach drop. "Why?" "She said Daddy will be sad if he knows she's near. She said you'd understand." Lena knelt beside the bed, her hands trembling. "Ava, what else did she say?" Ava leaned closer, voice barely a whisper. "She said the truth is in the blue box." Lena blinked. "What blue box?" Ava pointed toward the bookshelf. "The one with the stars." It was an old wooden toy chest, painted navy with tiny yellow stars. Lena had seen it 100 times, but never opened it. It was where Ava kept her drawings and trinkets. When Ava finally drifted back to sleep, Lena crossed the room, heart hammering. She lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of drawings, mostly of boats, moons, and faceless women standing by the shore. But at the very bottom, wrapped in a faded scarf, was something else, a small tin box, sky blue, rusted around the edges. Lena hesitated, then opened it. Inside lay a bundle of photographs and letters tied together with a piece of string. She unfolded one. The handwriting was the same as the postcards, elegant, looping, deliberate. To Charles. "I'm sorry for leaving. I needed air that didn't taste like money. I thought the sea would make me clean again. I was wrong. Tell Ava I loved her. Tell her I'll come back when the yellow moon rises. But if I don't, please don't let her forget my name." The last line was smudged, blurred by water, maybe tears, maybe rain. Lena turned over another photo. Elise holding baby Ava by the docks, sunlight in her hair. Behind them, a man stood slightly out of focus. Definitely not Charles. A chill crawled up Lena's spine. She looked closer. The man's hand rested gently on Elise's shoulder. The expression between them was unmistakable. Familiarity, tenderness. It wasn't a random picture. It was a secret frozen in color. Suddenly, Lena understood the letters. The disappearance. The silence. Elise hadn't been taken by the sea. She had run. From guilt, from a truth that couldn't stay buried in this house. And now she was back. The next morning, Charles seemed restless. He skipped breakfast, pacing near the window, his phone buzzing again and again. "Everything okay?" Lena asked, pretending calm. He looked up sharply. "Did you notice anything strange last night?" Her throat tightened. "What kind of strange?" He hesitated, then said, "Lights by the gate. Someone moving near the fence." Lena feigned surprise. "Maybe Rico." "No," he said firmly. "Rico left early yesterday. I called him." He rubbed a hand over his face. "This house is starting to feel haunted." Lena forced a laugh. "Maybe it's just the wind." He didn't smile. "If Elise thinks she can just walk back in here after everything—" He stopped himself, jaw clenched. Lena's pulse quickened. "You think she's back?" Charles met her eyes. "I know she is. She sent me another letter." He pulled a folded page from his pocket. The paper was damp as if it had been found outside. "You lied to her, Charles. You lied to everyone. The sea can't hide the truth forever." He crumpled it in his fist. "She's trying to ruin what's left." "Maybe she just wants her daughter," Lena said quietly. He looked at her with a kind of exhausted disbelief. "She forfeited that right the day she left. You've been here, Lena. You've seen what she missed. Ava doesn't even remember her face." Lena wanted to say she does, but the words stuck. That night, Lena couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the house felt deliberate. At one point, she looked out the kitchen window and saw it again, the same shape near the garden, still and silent beneath the trees. She opened the back door, heart pounding. "Elise?" she whispered. The shape moved slightly, and a voice came through the dark. "You found the box?" Lena stepped forward. Moonlight fell across Elise's face. Her hair was tangled, her eyes rimmed red. She looked fragile, but there was steel under the surface. "Why did you leave her?" Lena asked, voice trembling. "I didn't leave her," Elise said. "I left him. You had another man," Lena said softly. "The photo—" Elise flinched. "He wasn't another man. He was the truth. Charles made me his ornament. I painted rooms while he built empires. And when I asked for my own life, he said I was sick. He told everyone I'd lost my mind." Her voice broke. "He took Ava from me, said I was unstable. I left because I thought it would keep her safe." Lena's chest tightened. "He said you abandoned her." "I never did," Elise whispered fiercely. "I wrote, I begged. He burned my letters. I watched from the cliffs when he told her I was gone." Lena's breath caught. "You've been watching?" "Every month," Elise said. "Every full moon I'd come here, just to see her window light up, just to know she's still breathing." Lena swallowed hard. "Why now?" "Because she called me," Elise said simply. "Children have ways of reaching what adults forget." They stood in silence. Only the wind moving through the branches. Elise reached into her coat and held out a small silver pendant, the crescent from the photograph. "Give this to her," she said. "Tell her mother never stopped singing." Lena's fingers closed around it. "You could tell her yourself." "Not yet," Elise murmured. "Not until she knows the truth. And not until he stops pretending I'm dead." She turned to leave, then paused. "He'll destroy you if he finds out you've helped me." Lena stepped closer. "I'm not afraid of him." Elise smiled sadly. "You should be." The next morning, Lena found Charles in the study, staring at his laptop screen. The blue light made his face look hollow. "She's been here, hasn't she?" he said without looking up. Lena's heart stuttered. "Who?" "Elise." His voice was calm, too calm. "The security cameras caught her last night. Standing in the garden, talking to someone." He turned the screen toward her. The footage showed two figures, one clearly Elise, the other unmistakably Lena. Charles's eyes were cold. "You lied to me?" Lena opened her mouth, but no words came. "I trusted you with my daughter," he said, rising slowly. "And you bring a ghost into my house." "She's not a ghost," Lena said, trembling. "She's a mother who wants her child. She's unstable." Charles snapped. "She'll destroy everything I've built." He slammed the laptop shut and leaned close, voice low. "If you ever let her near Ava again, you're done here. Do you understand me?" Lena met his gaze. "You can fire me," she said quietly, "but you can't stop the truth from coming home." He stared at her for a long moment, then walked out, slamming the door behind him. Lena stood there shaking. Her job, her home, her heart, all hanging by a thread. That night she went to Ava's room with the pendant. The little girl was already half asleep. "What's that?" Ava murmured. Lena placed the crescent necklace in her palm. "A gift from someone who loves you very much." Ava smiled drowsily and clutched it to her chest. "It smells like the sea," she whispered before drifting off. Lena sat beside her bed until dawn, watching the light change. Outside, far beyond the fence, a car idled in the fog. Inside sat Elise, eyes fixed on the window glowing faintly upstairs. She whispered a single word that fogged the glass. "Soon." And as the first light touched the garden, the yellow moon faded behind the clouds, leaving the promise of a storm that had only begun. The next few days felt like walking through a dream that refused to wake. The Whittaker mansion was quiet in all the wrong ways, too still, too careful. Every voice was softer, every footstep cautious, as though the walls themselves were listening. Charles became a ghost of himself. He stopped shaving, stopped smiling. Most of the time, he stayed locked in his study, surrounded by unopened letters and whiskey bottles. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from the kind of sleepless rage that turns grief into obsession. Lena tried to keep things normal for Ava's sake. Breakfast at 8, walk in the garden at 10, story time before bed. But the child's drawings told another story, more boats, more moons. And now, faces, Elise's face, always with the same detail, one crescent necklace glowing at her throat. That morning, while Ava was napping, Lena went to tidy Charles's study. He had forbidden her from entering, but she couldn't ignore the smell of spilled liquor and the sight of paper scattered across the floor. She began stacking the papers, until something caught her eye, a thick envelope, sealed in wax, resting in the corner of the desk. It bore no address, only a symbol pressed into the wax, a crescent moon. Her breath hitched. Elise's mark. She hesitated, but curiosity, no, duty, pushed her. The seal cracked with a soft sigh. Inside were documents, old ones, birth certificates, hospital papers, a court order, and then, tucked between them, a DNA report. Lena's heart began to pound. Her eyes moved across the page, trying to understand the columns, the codes, the verdict. Result: non-paternity confirmed. Subject A, Charles Whittaker. Subject B, Ava Whittaker. Probability of paternity, 0.000%. The paper trembled in her hands. Ava wasn't Charles's child. Lena dropped into the chair, breath coming shallow. Everything, Elise's words, her disappearance, the guilt in Charles's eyes, snapped into place like glass shards forming a picture. Elise had left not out of madness, but out of mercy. Charles had buried the truth beneath money and power, rewriting history so cleanly that even his own daughter lived inside the lie. "Lena?" The voice made her jump. Charles was in the doorway, eyes dark and unreadable. "What are you doing in here?" "I was just cleaning," she began, but the paper in her hand betrayed her. His gaze dropped to it. The color drained from his face. "Where did you get that?" "It was on your desk," Lena whispered. "You lied to her. To everyone." Charles stepped forward slowly, his jaw tight. "You don't understand what that paper cost me." "She has a right to know," Lena said, rising. "She has a right to the truth. She's a child," he shouted. "You think she needs to know her father's a stranger? That her mother—" He broke off, breathing hard. "That woman destroyed this family. She ruined me." "You ruined yourself," Lena said quietly. For a moment his face twisted, not in anger, but something close to grief. Then the mask returned. "You're finished here," he said. "Pack your things and leave by morning. Where will Ava go?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer. He turned, and the door slammed shut like a final verdict. That night Lena couldn't bear to sleep. She sat by Ava's bed, watching the moonlight drift across the floor. Ava stirred and mumbled, "Don't cry, Lena." Lena froze. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Ava's eyes stayed closed. "Mama said you'd cry when you knew." Lena's throat tightened. "When I knew what?" She said Daddy stole the stars from her box, and then the child fell back into deep, peaceful sleep. The stars. The toy box. Lena's heart raced as she opened it again, this time searching the corners. At the very bottom, beneath the fabric lining, her fingers hit something hard. A false panel. She pried it open and found a small flash drive. She didn't wait. She slipped it into her own phone using an adapter and opened the files. Videos, dozens of them. She clicked the first. The screen lit up with Elise's face, tired, tear-streaked, sitting in a room that looked like a cheap motel. "If you're watching this," Elise said softly, "then he's told you I'm gone. But I didn't disappear. Charles made sure no one would believe me. He took Ava. He took my name. He took everything. The only thing he couldn't take was the truth." She lifted a piece of paper, the same DNA report. "He found out Ava wasn't his and said he'd make sure she never knew who she came from. I tried to run with her. He stopped me. I left because he said if I stayed, he'd ruin her life." Lena's hand flew to her mouth. "But she'll come looking one day," Elise continued. "And when she does, tell her I never stopped singing the Sunshine Song." The video ended. Lena sat frozen. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon. She downloaded the videos to her own device and tucked the drive back in the box. Then she crept down the hall toward the study. Charles was there, sitting in the dark with a drink. His reflection flickered in the window, eyes hollow. "I saw her video," Lena said quietly. He didn't turn. "Of course you did. Why did you do it?" He gave a short, bitter laugh. "You think a man like me can survive that kind of humiliation? My wife, my friends, my company, everyone whispering that I was raising another man's child." "She didn't deserve this," Lena said. "She destroyed my life." His voice rose. "I built everything from nothing. I gave her a mansion, a family, the world, and she paid me back with betrayal. And Ava." Lena's voice broke. "She's not your revenge story. She's a little girl who just wants her mother." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Remorse, maybe, or the memory of the man he used to be. Then the storm outside broke. Rain slashing against the windows. "I told you to leave," he said coldly. "You'll be gone by morning." He turned away, but Lena caught sight of something on his desk. A boarding pass, one way to Switzerland. Departure 6 a.m. He wasn't just firing her. He was running. With Ava, panic shot through her veins. She waited until he went upstairs, then quietly packed a small bag. She slipped the necklace around Ava's neck, whispered her name, and carried her to the car in the rain. By the time dawn broke, they were miles down the coast. The mansion shrinking behind them like a shadow. At a small inn near the harbor, Lena set Ava on the bed. The child stirred. "Where are we going?" "To find your mother," Lena said softly. Outside, waves crashed against the rocks. The sea smelled alive, and when the morning light hit the window, Lena saw her, Elise, standing by the pier in her red coat, tears glinting in her eyes, the crescent pendant missing from her neck. She lifted her gaze toward the room, and when she saw the child at the window, her hands flew to her mouth. Eva pressed her small hand to the glass. "Mama," she whispered. Elise nodded slowly, crying without sound. But before Lena could move, the sound of tires screeched behind them. Charles's car. He had found them. The storm, it seemed, was far from over. The sky above the harbor was a bruised gray, the color of regret. Rain rolled down in long, cold sheets, turning the narrow pier into a slick ribbon of wood and light. Lena stood by the motel window, heart hammering against her ribs as she watched the black SUV grind to a halt beside the docks. Charles had arrived. Elise froze where she stood, her red coat bright as a wound against the storm. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. The mother she had lost, the father who had lied, the woman who had become both their witness and their bridge. Ava pressed her hands against the glass. "Lena, why is Daddy here?" Lena swallowed hard. "Because he doesn't understand yet, sweetheart." Charles stepped out of the car, rain soaking through his shirt instantly. He looked nothing like the powerful man he pretended to be. His hair was plastered to his forehead, his eyes wild and shining with something between rage and heartbreak. "Elise!" His voice carried through the wind, rough and raw. "Don't you dare run again!" Elise didn't move. The sea crashed behind her like applause for something no one wanted to see. "You don't get to tell me where I can go, Charles," she said. "Not anymore." He started toward her, boots splashing through the puddles. "You took everything from me. My name, my pride. I gave you love," Elise cut in, voice trembling. "You turned it into ownership. You turned me into a ghost before I ever left. Liar." The word cracked through the storm like a whip. Lena felt Ava flinch beside her. The little girl's fingers tightened around her arm. "They're shouting, Lena. Make them stop." "It's okay," Lena whispered, even though nothing was okay. She grabbed her coat and hurried out the door. The rain hit her like cold glass. The wooden pier creaked underfoot as she ran toward them. "Elise!" she called. "Charles, stop this!" They turned toward her, their faces pale in the flashing stormlight. For a moment, they both looked like strangers, two people drowning in the same grief, but too proud to swim toward each other. Charles pointed at Lena. "You did this. You brought her back. You turned my daughter against me. You turned yourself against her." Lena shouted back. "You built a lie so perfect even you started believing it." His expression cracked, and for a split second, the rage gave way to fear. "If she leaves with her, I lose everything." "She's not a thing to lose, Charles," Lena said. "She's a child." Behind them, a gust of wind tore through the pier. The waves slammed against the posts, sending spray up to their knees. Elise took a cautious step closer. "Please, let me see her." Charles's jaw tightened. "You'll poison her?" Elise shook her head, tears mixing with the rain. "I'll give her the truth. You can't raise her inside your silence forever. I gave her safety. You gave her loneliness." The words hit him like a blade. He staggered back a step, hand gripping the railing. That was when the motel door banged open again. Ava was there, small, barefoot, the silver crescent necklace glinting at her throat. She had slipped past Lena while they argued. "Mummy." The word stopped everything. Even the rain seemed to pause. Elise turned slowly, her lips trembling. "Ava." The little girl stepped forward, the hem of her nightgown soaking up rain. "You came back?" Elise dropped to her knees, arms open, tears falling freely now. "I promised I would, didn't I?" Ava ran into her embrace. The sound she made, a laugh, a sob, something too full to name, ripped through the storm like sunlight breaking through clouds. Elise held her rocking, whispering into her hair, the same melody that had lived in the walls of that house for years. "You are my sunshine." Lena pressed a hand to her mouth. Charles stood motionless, eyes wide, as if seeing something he'd forgotten existed. For a moment he looked almost human again. Then his shoulders slumped, and the fight drained out of him. He took a step forward. "Elise." She looked up at him, still holding Ava. "You can hate me all you want, but don't make her pay for it." He stared at the child, the daughter who wasn't his by blood, but had been his every heartbeat for years. His lips parted, but no sound came. His throat moved, like he was swallowing the truth for the first time. Finally, he said hoarsely, "She'll always be mine too." Elise nodded through her tears. "Then let's stop pretending. Let's both love her. And stop lying to her." Something broke in him then. He sank to his knees beside them, the three of them framed against the angry sea. For a long moment, they were silent. Three broken pieces finally finding the same shore. Lena stood a few steps away, rain washing down her face, watching the impossible scene unfold. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, and it wasn't redemption, but it was something. After a while, Charles rose, looking at Elise and then at Lena. His voice was quiet, almost lost in the wind. "You saved her." "Both of you did?" Lena shook her head. "No, she saved herself. Children always do." He gave a faint, weary smile. "Maybe you're right." He turned toward Elise. "Take her if that's what you want. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "That you'll tell her who I really was. Not the monster, not the victim. Just the man who tried and failed to be enough." Elise nodded. "I can do that." He exhaled, the breath shuddering out of him like something that had waited years to leave. "Then go." And just like that, the storm began to fade. They walked together toward the car, Elise carrying Ava, Lena following close behind. The sky cracked open with a pale sunrise, the clouds burning gold at the edges. The world looked newly washed. Before climbing in, Elise turned to Lena. "You don't have to come with us." "You've done enough," Lena smiled softly. "I started this story with her. I'd like to see how it ends," Elise nodded. "Then stay with us, for as long as she needs you." As they drove away, the mansion on the hill grew smaller in the rearview mirror. It stood proud and empty, the house that had once been a cage, now finally hollowed clean by truth. Inside the car, Ava leaned sleepily against her mother's shoulder, fingers twirling the crescent pendant. "Will you sing again?" she murmured. Elise looked at Lena through the mirror. Their eyes met, one woman who had given birth, another who had given everything else. Together they began to sing, soft and trembling but whole. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." The road stretched ahead, winding along the coast, where the sea met the sky in an endless line of forgiveness, and somewhere between the waves and the wind, a story that began with lies finally found its truth, because motherhood, Lena thought, wasn't about blood. It was about who stayed, and she was staying.